Have you ever heard the wild tale of a teen who got arrested for goat rustling only to become one of country music's most remarkable voices? Prepare to meet Johnny Rodriguez, the singer who blended Spanish flourishes into classic Nashville sounds and scored back-to-back #1 hits, one hit in the 1970s. In today's video, we'll uncover how poverty, a fateful jailhouse performance, and a chance encounter with Tom T. Hall set him on a path to stardom, ultimately earning him a spot in the Grand Ole Opry and a place in country music lore. If you're ready for a story packed with hardship, triumph, and the Tex-Mex spirit that reshaped honky-tonk, you've come to the right place. Let's ride our thumbs to Mexico and dive in. Johnny Rodriguez, born in 1951 into a large family of 9 children, somewhere amid the dusty backdrop of southwestern Texas, where farmland and small towns intermingle with ranches and Spanish-inflected country music. His father, Andres, died when Johnny was just 4 years old, leaving his mother, Natividad, to shoulder the burden of raising a brood of 9 in near poverty. Johnny and his siblings survived on the meager income Natividad earned by doing odd jobs, cleaning houses, washing clothes, or laboring in fields. His family was so poor that they occasionally struggled to afford shoes for every child at the same time. This atmosphere of hardship undoubtedly shaped Johnny's perspective from the beginning, giving him an edge of determination and self-reliance that would later serve him well, or get him into trouble, depending on the moment. By his teenage years, Johnny had already developed a streak of rebellion. He was described by one older relative, in an interview recounted years later by the Dallas Morning News, as a wild kid who always carried a tune in his head and sometimes broke the rules to get a guitar if he didn't have money for one. At age 16, he stole a guitar, leading to his first arrest. Though the punishment was minor, it set a precedent for further run-ins with the law. The greatest turning point in that regard arrived in 1971, when Johnny was 19 and got tangled in an incident known locally as goat rustling. Johnny and some friends decided to swipe a goat, or possibly more than one, as a prank. Whether it was truly a prank or a miscalculation isn't entirely clear, but the result was that Johnny found himself behind bars. He would later remark to a reporter from Texas Monthly that ending up in jail for that goat fiasco felt like his lowest point, poor, fatherless, and now incarcerated for something fairly ridiculous. But that is precisely where his life would take an unimaginable turn. While locked up, Johnny frequently sang to lift the spirits of fellow inmates. Jailhouse singing wasn't uncommon. Plenty of frustrated souls found solace in music, but Johnny's performances struck a chord. One of the guards noticed his rich voice, an earthy country timbre interwoven with Spanish phrases, and realized there was something special going on. In an almost fairy tale twist, the guard had contacts with Tom T. Hall, an ascending force in country music, known for penning hits like Harper Valley PTA. The guard told Hall, "You've got to hear this kid." Intrigued, Hall followed up. The rest, as they say, was the spark that ignited a significant career. In multiple interviews, including one with CMA Close-Up in the mid-1970s, Tom T. Hall recalled how improbable the story sounded. A kid in a Texas jail for goat rustling, but with a voice that could melt hearts. Yet, Hall met Johnny, heard him sing, and believed in his promise enough to pave the way for him to be heard by Mercury Records. Under normal circumstances, a major label might have hesitated to sign an unknown singer from rural Texas who came with a bit of a criminal record. But in 1972, the shifting climate of country music had opened the door to new voices, especially those that sounded authentically Southern or Southwestern. From Willie Nelson's rebellious style to Merle Haggard's outlaw aura, Nashville was more open than ever to men who had lived a little and who sang from genuine hardship. At age 21, Johnny Rodriguez signed with Mercury, releasing his debut single, Pass Me By If You're Only Passing Through, later that year. This track soared to number 1, 9 on the Billboard country charts, an impressive feat for a newcomer who had only recently been behind bars. The success felt like it happened overnight. An unknown kid with a bilingual singing style had broken through to mainstream country audiences. Critics at the time were intrigued. Billboard described his voice as haunting, with a Hispanic flavor that sets him apart, and the general consensus was that Johnny was someone worth watching. But it was in 1973 that Johnny's career truly exploded. The single Riding My Thumb to Mexico shot to number 1 on the country charts, quickly becoming an anthem for wanderers and dreamers alike. Fans responded to the Tex-Mex flair in the melody, a blend of dusty highways and a gentle swagger that only someone who lived near the border might conjure. Many in southwestern Texas, including some critics who wrote for the San Antonio Express News, considered it a cultural milestone. It was as though a bilingual perspective was finally cracking the conservative shell of Nashville's country music. Later the same year, You Always Come Back to Hurting Me also hit number 1, proving that the first success was no fluke. By that point, Johnny was a certified star, standing alongside the heavyweights of the era. From 1973 to 1979, he accumulated 11 number 1 hits, an astonishing streak by any measure. Among those were songs like That's the Way Love Goes, 1974, Just Get Up and Close the Door, 1975, and his cover of Desperado, 1977, which originally belonged to the Eagles but took on a distinct country flavor under Johnny's interpretation. His 1974 album Just For You climbed to number 1 on the country album charts, eventually selling more than 500,000 copies. Cashbox magazine ran a feature praising Johnny's easy melding of Spanish lyrics and the honky-tonk style that shaped so much of mainstream country, calling him one of the freshest voices since the heyday of Marty Robbins. Another significant milestone came in 1976 when, at the age of 24, Johnny was inducted into the Grand Ole Opry, making him one of the youngest members ever at that time. Willie Nelson, who was also carving his own outlaw path, embraced Johnny and occasionally invited him on stage. The two performed a few live sets, blending Willie's jazzy acoustic strumming with Johnny's southwestern seasoning, a combination that wowed fans at the Opry, according to reviews in the Nashville Banner. Willie once joked in a backstage conversation recounted by a local blog, "The kid can sing me under the table if we aren't careful." Like so many artists, Johnny's success came with personal challenges. The late 1970s marked the peak of his chart dominance, but by 1979 he made the decision to switch from Mercury to Epic Records. Various industry insiders told the Houston Post that he sought a bigger promotional budget and more creative freedom. At Epic, he continued to find modest success, notably with Down on the Rio Grande in 1980, which climbed to number. He also ventured into acting, appearing in shows like Nashville Palace, 1981, a short-lived TV variety series, and taking a cameo role in Perry Mason, The Case of the Musical Murder, 1889. His appearances on The Tonight Show were described in a 1982 People magazine article as effortlessly charming, broadening his fan base beyond hardcore country circles. By the mid-1980s, the shape of the country music market was changing. Pop influences were creeping in thanks to artists like Kenny Rogers, and soon the megastars of the 1990s. Meanwhile, Johnny's style, though once refreshing, began to feel overshadowed by the slick production values many mainstream labels favored. Still, In 1987, he recorded a Spanish-language album called Por Siempre. It didn't top the charts, but Billboard noted in 1988 that it sold decently among Latino audiences in Texas and California. This move placed Johnny on a continuum with other boundary-crossing acts like Freddie Fender, further establishing that bridging Spanish and English could open new fan bases. As the 1990s dawned, radio tastes pivoted again. Garth Brooks exploded onto the scene. Shania Twain followed, and many veterans of the 1970s and 1980s found themselves with a diminishing radio presence. Johnny was no exception. His final appearance in the top 10 was I Didn't, Every Chance I Had, in 1988, peaking at number 7, after which chart success eluded him. Additionally, personal setbacks, friction with record labels, and management changes led to a slowdown in new releases. Even so, he refused to walk away. He tried re-establishing himself with albums like Coming Home, 1990, and You Can Say That Again, 1998. Though neither performed spectacularly on the charts, they maintained a devoted core of fans who remembered the raw authenticity behind tracks like Riding My Thumb to Mexico. A 1998 retrospective in Country Weekly framed Johnny as a once shining star determined to find his second act. By 2017, Johnny had enough momentum for live in concert, capturing the flavor of smaller, intimate shows. He seldom performed in major arenas at this point, but country fairs, festivals, and cozy honky-tonks in and around Texas welcomed him. Newspapers like the Bandera Bulletin published warm reviews of these appearances, praising the sense of nostalgia they evoked for fans. Over the arc of his career, Johnny has charted 45 singles, claiming 15 of them as number one hits and sold over 5 million records. Yet the Country Music Hall of Fame has so far not inducted him, a point of ongoing debate among his loyal following. Petitions on X, formerly Twitter, circulated in 2023, calling for a 2025 induction. Whether that recognition comes or not, Riding My Thumb to Mexico keeps accumulating streams from fans old and new, in part thanks to its easygoing, timeless aura. Observers note that in a modern era that celebrates the hybrid styles of Casey Musgraves or the pop-laced country of crossover stars, the bilingual approach that once set Johnny apart might be ripe for rediscovery. Parallel to his career developments, Johnny's personal life carried its own drama. He was only 4 when his father died, leaving an enormous void in a household already struggling financially. Some accounts say that as a child, he'd run barefoot through the fields, humming tunes he'd heard on a battered radio set. By his late teens, the rebellious streak had manifested in petty crimes, stealing a guitar, eventually the goat heist in 1971, and ironically, it was precisely that 1971 jail stint that led to Tom T. Hall discovering him. Indeed, Johnny once told a local station in Devine, Texas, "If I hadn't gone to jail, I might never have met Tom T. Hall. It's weird how life works." He also suffered a major emotional blow in 1969 when his older brother, Andres Jr., died in a car accident at 22. Johnny claimed that tragedy stirred up so many emotions that he channeled them into early songs like We Believe in Happy Endings, giving him a well of genuine pain to draw from whenever he stepped in front of a microphone. In his adult years, he embarked on multiple marriages. In 1974, he wed Linda Y. Benez, with whom he had a daughter named Aubrey. The strain of incessant touring reportedly contributed to their divorce in 1980. Not long after, in 1991, he married Lena Nelson, daughter of Willie Nelson, but that union dissolved by 1993, leaving no children. Willie teased in an interview around that time that he liked Johnny's style, but that he can't keep up with my daughter. In 1997, Johnny married Debbie McNeely, and they had a son, Johnny Jr., but parted ways by 2006. Opry pursued a brief career in music without hitting national recognition, while Johnny Jr. stayed out of the public eye. Around 2010, Johnny settled in Bandera, Texas, to be near extended family and revisit his roots, which had always pulled at his heart. He also fought battles with substance abuse. The 1980s were a tumultuous period for many country stars, and Johnny was no exception. Cocaine and alcohol became frequent crutches. A 1987 DUI arrest contributed to losing his deal with Epic Records as label executives grew wary of the negative press. In 1990, a newly sober Johnny told Country Weekly in a 1998 follow-up interview that the turning point had been seeing my kid's eyes, pushing him to enter a rehab program. But heartbreak continued as his mother Natividad died in 1995, prompting him to explore more spiritual or gospel-inflected songs like Run for the Border, 1999, which ironically sounds like a light-hearted Tex-Mex piece, but includes references to a spiritual journey. Some in the local Texas press speculated that her death further motivated him to keep his life on track, although the bigger commercial successes never quite returned. Arguably, the biggest personal crisis came in 1998 when Johnny shot and killed a friend, Israel Bosco Borrego, in his Alamo home. Press outlets, including the San Antonio Express-News, jumped on the story, initially uncertain whether it involved drunken violence or a genuine misunderstanding. Johnny maintained he believed Borrego was an intruder. Charged with murder, he went to trial in 1999 and was ultimately acquitted. While the jury accepted his self-defense claim, the publicity cost him gigs and tarnished his reputation. Mentions of him in the national press dwindled, although local coverage in the Houston Chronicle and other outlets occasionally lamented that one of Texas country's brightest lights found himself in the darkest circumstances. He eventually relocated to Nashville in an effort to repair professional ties, performing Opry gigs that appealed to longtime fans. Writers for the Tennessean wrote that while the tragedy wouldn't soon be forgotten, audiences gave Johnny a chance to move forward, welcoming him back on stage where he reprised old favorites. Over time, he managed a slow but steady rebuilding, culminating in limited tours and the 2017 live-in concert release. Reflecting on Johnny Rodriguez's entire arc, one sees a man who soared to the pinnacle of country music in the 1970s, forging a bilingual path that mainstream Nashville had rarely seen. He blended Southwestern influences with honky-tonk, cut an unmistakable figure at the Grand Ole Opry, and introduced fans to songs that remain staples of classic country playlists. Yet that success was shadowed by personal tragedies: his father's early death, the loss of his brother, multiple divorces, a murder trial, and by bouts of substance abuse that threatened everything he had built. Another dimension was the question of why he never achieved the widespread, enduring fame of peers like Willie Nelson or Dolly Parton. Perhaps his chart success burned bright but briefly, or maybe the controversies overshadowed the brilliance of his prime. The label changes didn't help. By the time the 1990s wave of Garth Brooks, Alan Jackson, and other big hitters arrived, radio programmers often relegated Johnny to the oldies rotation. Still, the story doesn't end in bitterness. Those who attended his smaller gigs in the 2000s and 2010s remarked on a performer who retained an authentic warmth, telling anecdotes about the goat rustling days and about meeting Tom T. Hall. The Bandera Bulletin wrote a 2019 piece praising him for continuing to connect with fans as though he never left the top of the charts. The magazine also pointed out the fervent push among supporters to see Johnny enshrined in the Country Music Hall of Fame, especially given that he was the first major Mexican-American star to earn consistent #1 hit in the mainstream market. Indeed, fans across social media platforms, including Facebook groups and X, formerly Twitter, have circulated petitions highlighting that bridging a cultural gap should matter as much as career longevity when considering Hall of Fame credentials. Some experts in country music journalism have begun to reevaluate Johnny's catalog, realizing that in today's more inclusive environment, he might have been hailed as a visionary. The bilingual lines, the Tex-Mex guitar infusions, and the open emotional style of heartbreak ballads predate the modern trend in which Latino artists attempt to fuse Spanish with country. In that sense, he was an early champion of a crossover approach. Even critics who, at the time, might have found his accent novel or pegged him as a short-term phenomenon, now concede that his influence was noteworthy. Willie Nelson's public remarks in the mid-1970s about enjoying that Spanish flair in Johnny's songs highlight how big a presence Johnny was among the so-called outlaw community. Meanwhile, Johnny's personal life has moved into a more reflective phase. Approaching the later years of his career, he has stated in occasional interviews that he's content living near Bandera, close to the land that shaped him. He pops up at benefits, sometimes raising money for local families in need or supporting children's medical expenses. The goat rustling incident is occasionally retold, always with a grin, as if acknowledging that fate can unfold in strange ways. The murder trial that ended in an acquittal still casts a shadow, but he rarely addresses it unless asked directly. On stage, he'd rather talk about the highs. The first time he heard himself on the radio, the feeling of stepping into the Grand Ole Opry circle, or the day Willie Nelson gave him a grin that said, "You belong here."